Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? 1st, 2025, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Vice President Kamala Harris pops out, gives a major speech last night. We'll show you what she had to say. And she took dead aim at the thugs occupying the White House. Also, Congressional Black Caucus members still reacting to Trump's first 100 days. He also had this weird-ass signing ceremony today, surrounded by his cultists as he establishes a religious liberty commission. I get the separation of church and state doesn't exist in his mind. Where do we show you what these weirdos actually were doing at the White House for this fake, no good, sorry, non-existent Christian? Yeah, I got a couple of things to say. Black pollster Christopher Towler is going to be here, breaking down a couple of recent data points that have been released about black and white voters in the last election. Also on today's show, we're going to talk about Shador Sanders. Jamel Hill, Clarence Hill, had a conversation last night where Clarence said Shador dropping to the fifth round may not be racist because these NFL executives don't know how to respond to a black man with privilege, meaning money. I'm going to break down how he was treated. I won't call it racist, but it was racial. Oh, I'm going to explain. It is time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Folks, there's without a doubt, Donald Trump leads a cult. And when I say leads a cult, I mean he leads a cult. Today at the White House, he signed this Religious Liberty Commission, okay, which don't know really what the hell that is. And you want to see weird? So I want you to watch these weirdos as Trump signs this. And you got Alveda King there, you got Paula White, and then you got Pastor Mark Burns. You got a whole bunch of yahoos. Okay, watch this level of sickness.
Twas grace that taught my heart to feel, and grace that fear relieved. How precious is that grace appeared. The hour I first believed. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved
Trump is sitting there. Let me zoom in. He's sitting there going, these people are weirdos. If y'all want to see a perfect example of how sick and demented white conservative evangelicals are, even they know he's a fraud. Even they know he ain't no Christian. That man fall asleep in church. Hell, he fell asleep at the Pope's funeral. How do we know he don't know a damn thing about church? Y'all, everybody know the rules. You go to a funeral for the Pope, you wear black. His ass in a blue suit. When they had the wounded warriors in the Oval Office, you guys were shot? There were bombs? Wow, that's amazing. There were people there with no limbs. Whoa, that's amazing. This is the greatest con job ever. But here's the real deal. The conservative evangelicals, he's their Trojan horse. They know he's fake. They know he ain't a real Christian. So what does he do? What y'all want? What y'all want? Get rid of Roe v. Wade? Got it. What y'all want? Y'all want a religious commission? All right, got it. All right, what else y'all want? As long as y'all give me y'all vote, I'll give y'all whatever y'all want. He is a fraud. This commission is a joke. These people are despicable. Every single one of them. I want to bring in my panel right now, Dr. Dola Haynes. She is Georgetown University School of Foreign Service out of D.C. Dr. Greg Carr, Department of Afro-American Studies, Howard University out of D.C. Zabora G, DEIA Consultant Employment Specialist out of D.C. Greg, I'm going to start with you. I mean, cultists, them fools, that man ain't even remote. He didn't even know how to hold a Bible right. When he cleared the crowds out to stand in front of the Episcopal Church a block from us right here, did not even know how to hold a Bible right.
No, he didn't, Roland. It's quite striking, brother, as you point out. That video combined with the cult meeting in the cabinet room yesterday, at this point, I mean, we can give them credit for one thing. You've drawn the lines very close. A man who all of us probably know too much about now, but you know more than we do, coming out of Texas and having seen this clown rise for years. Dan Patrick, being the chair of anything that has anything to do with religion or morals or ethics, lets you know how absurd this is. Ben Carson, the vice chair, which is absurd. And looking at now in the White House's announcement, I didn't see Alveda King's name, but I saw Phil McGraw, Dr. Phil, the damn Archbishop of New York. What is he doing there? I mean, Rabbi Meyer Soloveichik was there. I suppose that's why, and of course Paula White, who you've had many times excoriated, rightly so. Franklin Graham, but Timothy Dolan, man. I mean, you're sending a message of religious intolerance. And this isn't about Judaism. It isn't about Islam. Maybe I overlooked the Muslim member. Maybe I didn't. But clearly, finally, what's going on in this country is absolutely religious fascism. Yeah. Not extremism, but fascism. And what we have to face, even as we got word this afternoon that another federal judge slapped him around, this time right there in your home district, Southern District of Texas, which includes Houston and Brownsville, saying he can't use that Alien Enemy Act to deport Venezuelans, is that there's going to be, this is an all-out war basically for the rule of law in this country, and he is determined to knock down that wall between church and state.
This is the executive order here, Nola. The establishment of the Religious Liberty Commission. And you go through here, and he's talking about religious schools and all this sort of stuff, you name it. this ain't got nothing to do with any religion outside of radical, fundamentalist, right-wing Christianity. Pure and simple.
First of all, this isn't an area that I play around with. First of all, I was offended as a Catholic that he showed up, being him, not caring, and belligerent in his action of not caring what he wore. So it was a very disrespectful act because that is who he is, right? And also sitting here with the divinity degree, I can tell you that my Bible tells me in Exodus that you shall not worship an idol. And that is what they are sitting there doing. They are worshiping their golden calf.
Oh, wait. I forgot this. I saw the other day. You do know that he actually said he would like to be the Pope.
Oh, I did see that.
Hold on. For the folk who missed it, y'all, watch this.
As Pope? Yeah. I'd like to be Pope. That would be my number one choice.
I'd like to be Pope. That'd be my number one choice. And Lindsey Graham, if you want to see, again, his face is so far up Trump's ass. He literally is in brown face every single day. That fool actually put out a tweet about how amazing, how awesome. Look, hold on. Let me just. I just gotta blow this up for y'all, because y'all might think I'm lying. Y'all at home sitting there going, I think Roland lying. I think he just sitting here making stuff up. Surely that man did not say something that shameful, despicable, and ass-kissing. Well, yes, he did. Look at this dumbass Lindsey Graham. I was excited to hear that President Trump is open to the idea of being the next pope. This would truly be a dark horse candidate, but I would ask the papal conclave and Catholic faithful to keep an open mind about this possibility. The first Pope U.S. President combination has many upsides. Watching for white smoke. I'm watching for white ass kissing by Lindsey Graham. Nola, go ahead.
Did you see the Vatican's response when they listed qualifications? And we all know Donald Trump has 0 qualifications for any job on the planet. So that's a joke. And I don't play with God. I don't play with Jesus. That's why, for me, religion is very personal and private. But tonight, I am being very public about my thoughts and my feelings. Keep playing with God if you want to. Keep playing with God if you want to. And that's what these people are doing. They are not Christians. This is some warped ideology that is wrapped inside of white supremacy, and they are selling it to people as Christianity, and that somehow they are the true worshipers of God because every other word is God and amen. Okay, so they are pulling a fast one over on the American public for people that are actually thirsty for the word, people that are actually thirsty for the Lord, people that are actually thirsty for their lives to change. And here they are, snake oil salesmen, wholesale, selling a version, an idolatrous version of Christianity. And I'm very passionate and I'm very upset about this because this is not a game. And these people are playing with God, and keep testing them if you want to.
I had to remind, to the point Nola just made there, I had to remind people that I talked about this. When these people said they wanted a king. And the children of Israel wanted a king, Zipporah, and God said, but y'all got me. No, we want a king. God said, okay, I'm going to give y'all a king, but I'm going to tell y'all what the king is going to do. And he laid out all the evil stuff. And they got Saul. Then they were crying and gnashing of teeth because God was like, no. Y'all wanted a king. And the reality is, for the people who voted for this thug, for the people who voted for this religious pimp, they got their king. But see, Their king is about to wreak havoc on their lives. We already see what's happening with the economy. We've seen what's happening with tariffs. It's all across the board. And so this is the thing that people keep forgetting. I love the people like Trump. God saved me from assassination because he wanted me to be president. I need people to understand, when the Bible said God will give you the desires of your heart, that don't mean it's always good. God's like, okay, since you want that, going right ahead. Now, when you screw up, then you're going to come holler at me. America is going to come face to face with what happens when it asks for and gets a king, Zipporah.
They're definitely getting exactly what they want, and they're not being held accountable to what we call Christians live by. The Bible tells us in Micah, like, what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, love, mercy. We don't have any of these. This is number white nationalism in a Sunday suit, right? They dress it up. They make it seem like this is all the things we need. And in the reality is, it's like they're not following anybody's Bible. They're not following any religious protocols that have been there since the test of time. They're not handling people with truth in one hand, love in the other. It's all judgment. It's all hellfire, brimstone. And it's playing with God, like Nola said. And you're going to be held responsible for the things that you are doing. From rolling back all of these things to treating all of these different groups of people unjust, to not really paying attention to how your actions are impacting bulks of people, from the SAVE Act to everything that they're doing. It's just like a mockery of the faith. And for a woman of faith, it really disappoints me. Well, it don't disappoint me because that's who they are, right? This is who they've been. When they gave the slaves half a Bible, right? They've been doing these things forever, and they dress it up, and people don't want to speak out. It's time for people to start speaking truth to power. God tells us to go boldly in Christ, not to be okay with things that you know don't align with what the Bible say or whatever religion that you are following.
This, no doubt, Greg, this is Jim Crow Christianity. That's who Paula White and Dr. Phil and these people represent, including the black people.
It's true. It's absolutely true. I tell you, Roland, I mean, just listening to this conversation, and Lindsey Graham, I mean, you know, at what point, I mean, there are no rules left. I mean, that's beyond ass kissing. I mean, that's in the context of Christian religion, Catholicism in particular, sacrilegious. But you know, the oral arguments yesterday, the Oklahoma case that was argued before the Supreme Court, where Amy Coney Barrett has recused herself, and the decision may end up hinging on John Roberts, because the good Catholics would call themselves Catholics, like Clarence Thomas, and a man who was a Catholic fascist, Sam Alito. He's probably in some of them same weird Catholic cults or Catholic adjacent cults. I wouldn't call them. I wouldn't put that on Catholicism. That Pete Hegseth is in. But that Oklahoma case, where they're trying to become the first religious charter school, and not only that, but a virtual charter school, meaning they wanted to enroll 200 kids, I think, from around the country in a virtual charter school, religious charter school, Catholic in name only, probably, that could be global. The real attack, while this is absurd, this is a concerted attack. If you read Project 2025, if you go back to Lewis Powell's memo that led to, among other things, creation of the Heritage Foundation, then you know that this is the Christian fascist white nationalist response to the human rights movement that we know as the civil rights and black power movement of the 1960s and even the Reconstruction of the 1860s. So you nailed it. The Ku Klux Klan, after all, will call themselves Christians. And this movement, this white fascist Christian nationalist movement, rose in the wake of the liberation struggle, the physical struggle of African people to free ourselves. So I think when you call it Jim Crow, some people might say, well, you're going too far. No, you know that you are teaching the history of Jim Crow. It is a Christian fascist movement in principal part because they don't think that anybody other than white people are human. And in fact, we're no different than the other non-human animals. And as far as black people are concerned, we have no souls for a lot of them. So yeah, this is not just bizarre, it's dangerous.
Roland?
Joining us by phone is Congressman Jonathan Jackson. Congressman Jackson, your father was a part of that Black freedom movement. And the reality is these Jim Crow Christians, they despise what happened. They despise the 1964 Civil Rights Act. They despise the 1965 Voting Rights Act. They despise the 1968 Civil Rights Act known as the Fair Housing Act. They despise Title IX, which came in 1972, which was born out of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. They despise the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1996 that was born out of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. They despise the efforts to achieve equality and inclusion. They despise all of these things. And what we are seeing these right-wing Christian fundamentalists aided by these right-wing fundamentalists that you serve with in Congress. And then you have these nutcases like Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and Governor Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis in Florida and Kay Ivey in Alabama and then Tate Reeves in Mississippi, Bill Lee in Tennessee, Sarah Huckabee in Arkansas, McMaster's in South Carolina. That is what we are seeing, and folk had better pay attention because they absolutely want nothing more than a theocracy to rule this nation.
You have nailed it right on the head. And anytime, and people's theology ought to reflect in their voting. And that's where I think you concretize, demonstrating exactly what this is. If you have Christian values, then therefore you should not be trying to pass a tax cut, returning money to the wealthiest people and giving a Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security cut to those that are most vulnerable and in need. When they talk about government efficiency, we're all for that, but how are they trying to balance that? They're trying to balance it off of the back of those that have been marginalized. And what government efficiency gets wrong, according to Musk, who's not an elected official, who's not taking that step, is the government should be looking at people's vulnerabilities and efficiencies. And things don't, you can't see this from a computer screen. It's too impersonal. Those formulas don't show you that there are children whose parents have died that receive Social Security. Those formulas don't show you AI generated what's happening on the ground level. And I've got an enormous amount of respect, having been in this office for 2.5 years, for the people in the federal workforce that have dedicated themselves towards running in the government efficiently. Social Security is a very efficient program. And if they were telling the truth and they have rooted out waste, fraud, and abuse, we should start seeing indictments of individuals. They aren't naming individuals. They are not finding waste, fraud, and abuse. But what you are going to find is that when people are trying to call in to get their Social Security payments, they're not going to be able to talk with anyone. They're going to have offices closed, and you're going to see those that are elderly that need help going to be most vulnerable and left out. And every time they keep talking about these work requirements, Brother Roland, what fundamentally happens is there's so much more red tape. There are already work requirements for the SNAP, the Supplemental Nutritional Program that affects 41 million people, that on average is giving people $2 a day per meal out of a $1.5 trillion budget. We've been hung up in committee for 2.5 years on $30 billion. There is rising malnutrition in the United States. We should be talking about raising supplemental nutritional assistance. In return, they're talking about getting rid of it and reducing this and having more work requirements. The studies show when they continue to do work requirements beyond what's already in the law now, people get frustrated and can't keep up with the volume and onerous amount of paperwork, so they stop applying. So it looks like people have dropped off the rolls because they didn't need it. No, they got frustrated and could not navigate it. So it's very cruel. It happened in Kentucky. It's now moving around the country. And I think the Democrats also, I've started a Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Caucus with Congressman Cleo Fields. We can't play around with this name. It is what it is. When you talk about the on-ramp for African Americans and women and others to be able to get into med school, law school, business school, corporations, training programs, that's a direct hit at us. You take down DEI in the military, you get rid of Jackie Robinson, take down DEI in the military, get rid of Colin Powell and Medgar Evers and Harriet Tubman. He's racialized it. So we have to be courageous and defend diversity, equity, inclusion. It's too big a body of an important piece of work that's being discarded. And all that diversity work in medical is called disparities. And they have eliminated the study of maternal health and the outcomes and the issues that are directly affecting us. Where Black women are 3 times more likely to die in childbirth right here in Chicago and most districts around the United States.
These folks, when you look at their policy, when you look at their priorities, when you look at their funding priorities, it is absolutely about the rich. It is absolutely about funding them. It is absolutely about making cuts to the poor, to the needy. These people are not Christians, and the Bible that they believe in is the Trump Lee Greenwood Bible that has the Constitution in it. I mean, and even that's a fraudulent Bible. These people have always been religious frauds. They do not abide by the teachings of Jesus in their public policy. You can't tell me that you love Jesus, yet you will support massive cuts that will lead to poor people dying across the world, and you are down with Elon Musk and Doge doing what they're doing. That is not Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, what they say, you'll know they're Christians by their love. And if they want to go in and have these cuts, we're all there. We've got elected. We filled out the paperwork. We want to participate. Why is he trying to circumvent our co-equal branch of government and circumvent the process? He's not a strong president. If he was strong, he'd be able to introduce a bill, have it come to the floor, and his body would vote upon it. He's trying to do this by fiat and edict to just write things and then tie everything up in court. He's got 200 lawsuits that have been filed, 95 injunctions that are currently going on. The court system, thank God, at the state level is holding. And the case that you mentioned before regarding Oklahoma is something that we should be very, very leery of, because if this goes through and they can redefine this level of religious segregation, does that mean you can have buses just for Christians and just for Arabs and just for other people to transport you to school? Does that mean you have to now have halal and kosher food and all these different things? Like, what exactly are they pushing through? It'd be a resegregation around religious lines that we've not seen before.
Indeed. And so I just want people to understand what's going on and to be very clear that what the right is doing. And listen, you got some Negroes out there. I said this one fool on Instagram always running his mouth. All he's done, see, he talks about how he hates Dems, but really what he's doing is trashing Dems and supporting Trump and their agenda. Mm-hmm. And I see all these little minions sitting here commenting and supporting. And I'm like, you fools don't even realize they don't even like y'all. They don't even like y'all. His law enforcement executive order is going to target black people. The economic policies are going to hurt black people. When you talk about food and goods and services along those lines, this is an absolutely anti-black administration. And any Negro who decides to roll up to the White House and stand with Donald Trump, that's what we say, all skin folk ain't our kinfolk.
Hello.
Pure and simple. Congressman Jonathan Jackson, always a pleasure. Give our best to your dad, Reverend Jackson.
Stay encouraged and keep up the great work, Brother Roland.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Thanks a bunch. Folks, going to a break. We'll be right back. Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. It's a rare occasion when a course taught in high school becomes a topic of national conversation, let alone a burning controversy. But that's exactly what happened with Advanced Placement African American Studies, courtesy of a certain Southern governor who's taking offense. On our next show, we take you inside the classroom for an up-close look at the course through the eyes of the teachers that teach it, the students that are taking it, and the communities that surround them.
And so many of the kids we saw, the truth. And You know, it just impacts those kids in such a big way.
A master teacher roundtable on the next Black Table that you do not want to miss, right here on the Black Star Network.
This week on The Other Side of Change.
And this is a special episode that is near and dear to our heart, especially during Earth Month, where we're going to talk about how the environment impacts our everyday life and what you can do to help solve it.
The issue is that the movement has not historically created a connection with us and has had narratives that really speak to our unique lived experiences and the environmental burdens and hazards that we experience. So there's really a narrative shift that needs to happen for the mainstream climate and environmental movement to really position itself as one that is for all of us.
Only on The Other Side of Change on the Black Star Network.
This is Essence Atkins.
Mr. Love King of R&B, Raheem Devon.
It's me, Sherry Shepard, and you know what you watch.
You're watching Roland Martin, Unfiltered.
Folks, we spend lots of time breaking down what took place in the 2024 election. In order for you to understand how you must respond in future elections, you must look back at the previous elections. Well, I was on Twitter the other day, and I saw this tweet, and it actually captured my attention. Chris Towler actually responded to it. We're going to have him on the show in about 20 or so minutes, and it was a tweet from Bernard Fraga. And in this particular tweet, Fraga is a professor of political science at Emory University. And it was interesting looking at this. So this was the graph that was posted. And this is what he tweeted. He said the 2024 current population survey says there was a 10.9 gap between the non-Hispanic white turnout rate, 70.5%, and the black turnout rate, 59.6%. That's the largest turnout gap in a presidential year since 1992. So I wanted to have a conversation to unpack that. So Dr. Fraga joins us right now. I'm glad to have you on the show. So first of all, when you look at this graph, this was the third, correct me if I'm wrong, this was the third highest turnout of black voters in history. Number one was 2008. Number two was 2012. This was number three. So does this dispel the notion that black folks did not support Vice President Kamala Harris, that they did not turn out? Just explain what you put out here.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on, and I'm a big fan of your work, and I really appreciate the important role that you play in informing, all of us about what's going on. So, in that chart, and this is data coming from the Census Bureau, every election year, they produce a big survey where they ask people whether or not they voted, not who they voted for, but just whether or not they voted. They've been doing this since the 1960s. So it's like the longest running big survey we have. And what we saw is that, you're correct, 2008, 2012, we saw the highest rate of black turnout. 2020 had record high voter turnout overall, but as you can see in that chart, if you look at 2020 near the end, that was mostly because white voter turnout was very, very high. Black turnout was the third highest. This year in 2024, just yesterday, we found the data in the Census Bureau data archives, and what it showed was that black turnout dropped more than other groups. So it was still high by historical levels, but it dropped more than for other groups. And I think it leads to a lot of questions about what kind of failures there were perhaps on the mobilizing side, not on the side of the voters, but on the side of the mobilizers to convince black voters to turn out to vote for Vice President Harris.
So when you say it dropped, so let's just walk us through. Tell us, so the highest was 2008, correct?
Yep.
And then Then 2012.
Yep, 2012 was this historic election where the idea was it was the first time in history that, according to this government survey, black turnout was higher than white turnout.
Right. That was 12.
That was 12. Obama's on the ticket.
What about 16?
16, it dropped maybe 5, 6, 7 percentage points. We know what happened in 2016. Donald Trump went at his victory tour and he said, thank God black voters didn't turn out to vote for Hillary Clinton. Yep. That's what sealed the victory for us.
That was 2016. What
2020.
What happened in 2020?
2020, we saw a high voter turnout overall, increase in black turnout. Joe Biden wins very narrowly. 2024.
Hold on. Before we go to 2024, the reason I want to stay on 2020, because the reason I believe that we have to look at 2020 as an aberration because it was COVID. Because you had a change in laws, you had ballot drop boxes, you had a totally different voting issue that went on, which is why Republicans were so angry. Republicans, going back to Paul Weyrich and the rest, they do not want people to vote. They do not want an expansive voter population. They literally have said, if we have broad voting, we lose. Literally, you've had the Speaker of the House, he died a couple of years ago in Georgia, said it. In Pennsylvania, they said it. They've said, oh, give us voter ID, we're going to win. So they can't stand that. So 2020 was a different year because of absentee balloting, things along those lines. So you had an increase in white voting in 2020, right?
Yeah, that's what you saw. You saw a high voter turnout for everybody because when you make it easier to vote,
there you go.
It's going to help everybody. It makes our democracy stronger.
So now we go to 2024. Trump is back, but then you had the whole drama with Biden dropping out. Folk felt he was too old, and we were laying out the data. His poll, one of the reasons Biden's poll numbers overall was so low, because it was low among African Americans. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, if you poll low among black people and you're a Democrat, your numbers are not going to be high.
That's right. That's right.
So in that period, that 11-week period, Kamala Harris actually repaired. The damage would have been far worse if Biden was on the ballot.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. So she actually repaired as much as she could in that particular window. What, though, is the lesson that we should be taking from this moving forward with the 2026 midterms next year and 2028?
Well, I think the main lesson is that the Democrats have work to do. They have to convince black voters not only that if they vote, they should support the Democrats, maybe they shouldn't be supporting Trump and the GOP, but they have to convince them that they're going to do something to help and actually give them a motivation and a reason to turn out to vote. I think that what we saw, as you mentioned very astutely, Kamala Harris really stopped the bleeding. And we can see that in the battleground states. The battleground states is where Harris did maybe cut the margin for Trump in half versus where Joe Biden was at. So the idea is she focused very, astutely on the places where she knew she needed to win. It wasn't enough at the end of the day because she was already in such a deficit. But the idea for 26 and especially 28 is that Democrats have to double down on not just mobilizing black voters, but convincing black voters that they're actually going to help, that they're actually going to do something to improve the standard of living, not just talk about the things that Trump is doing that are bad.
So here's the point right there, what you just said. And one of the things that I have been saying consistently is that when you look at the numbers, 65 plus votes the highest. Mm-hmm. They also more self-identify as Democrats, meaning African American.
Yeah.
Then you go 55 plus. Now you're talking about Gen X. The only demographic that voted for Donald Trump in the majority was Gen X. Mm-hmm. In many ways, Gen X is voting like baby boomers. But even baby boomers didn't support Donald Trump. Gen X was the only demographic. But when you go below 55, all of a sudden, as you go, the voting percentage drops, but also the Democratic self-identification drops. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't lean Democrat. It doesn't mean they likely may not vote Democrat. But what I've said is, and I said this directly to Vice President Kamala Harris, I said this to many others, is that you cannot run an old model, which is with white, and I'm very specific, white Democratic strategists, white male Democratic strategists and also women, what they keep doing. You cannot try to come in 2 or 3 months and think you got them. I said, you literally are going to have a 6 to 9 month runway to talk to what I call educate, enlighten, and inform. And so now when you get into registration season and then voting season, you properly communicate it to the voting group. And that means you're gonna have to spend money. Trump, the Republican and his PACs were running those trans radio ads on black radio in January, February, and March. The TV ads didn't show up until the fall football season, but they had been running those ads then. Biden and Harris and Democratic PACs were not doing that in the first half of 2024.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think this is a cautionary tale. Look at what happened with Latino voters in particular. Now, we all know, you look at the data, Latinos have swung more than any other minority group towards Trump in recent election cycles. And a lot of it is just because the Republicans are making an effort in places where Democrats haven't been doing a lot of work. Now, in terms of the turnout story, I think this is where you're absolutely right. The strategists need to rethink the calculus a little bit. They say, well, black voters, it's just a matter of turning people out to vote on election day or maybe a month before. It's got to be a constant kind of work to convince the community that the Democrats have their back. And if they don't do that, it makes it much easier for someone else to come in, run a few ads, do a few radio spots, talk about issues in just a particular way, and then peel off a little bit of the black vote or convince black voters who lean Democrat to stay home.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this on this show for quite some time, and I'm going to say it, and I don't care, and we're going to be, and it's just to the point. Why? And I'm going to tell you, Vice President Kamala Harris, her white campaign staff refused to listen to black people. Jen O'Malley Dillon, Stephanie Cutter, David Plouffe. We could go down the line, and even some of the high-ranking black folks as well. It was brain dead to me what they were doing. I'm going, do y'all understand what's happening out here? Y'all do not get what's going on here. You are assuming that, we're gonna get this vote, so we can just dump all this money, white suburban women. Nah. So I've said they're gonna have to spend 3 to 4 times as much time and money trying to cultivate their base voter.
That's right. And I think, you look at the work that, I know you've had, Cliff Albright on your show, Latasha Brown, Black Voters Matter. I've gone with them in the South, in Selma. We were in Alabama last year. And you can see that they talk about it in exactly the way that we're describing, which is it can't just be parachuting in right before Election Day. It's got to be a constant effort to, again, convince, right, to earn the vote from the black community among Democrats. And if they don't do it, the Republicans are going to try and do it. Now, we're not talking here about policy. It's just someone literally coming in and saying, I hear your concerns. Here's the plan. And, this year with Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket taking over for Biden, again, she started a deficit. I don't want to disparage in particular, given what we know about the gender dynamics, racial dynamics, these other issues. But, she started at a deficit and just had a lot of trouble breaking out of kind of the Joe Biden campaign strategy. And I think, 2020, as you said, was a special year. And, there was too much expectation that it was just going to repeat. They could do the same thing in 24, but it didn't work.
Indeed. Got questions for my panel. They are ready to ask those. Zabor, you first.
So my question is, how do we engage the other overlooked voting populations like the disabled population? They have a lot of intersectionality in those racial blocks, but at the same time, they weren't reached out to at all. So how do we really access and get those voters involved?
Well, I think this is the broader point. When we talk about the voting population and the population voting for Trump or voting for Harris, we're leaving out big segments of the population that didn't even vote at all. And then if you go within the group, right, you talk about young people, disabled people, their turnout rates are well below 50%, 40%. Now, no one thinks that's because of something intrinsic or something that couldn't be changed. It's about not feeling like they have an advocate. And I think that's the thing that needs to change. That's really the outreach strategy, is going and trying to make sure that community organizations that are doing the work are actually getting the support from these much better funded campaign organizations. We can talk about suppression in particular with the disability community as well. How easy is it to vote? How do election law changes increase the burdens on individuals to vote? And who are the organizations working to stop that or to limit how much that keeps people from voting?
Nola?
Thank you so much for this. As a fellow political scientist, my Americanist cousin, I'm on the IR side. I'm really enjoying this conversation. So, I wonder if you think that, I know that, foreign policy doesn't necessarily have a direct impact on voting turnout, but this, in my personal opinion, this seemed to have been a very unique cycle, the way that Israel and Gaza factored into the level of confusion and chaos. Like you mentioned, VP started off with the deficit, right? So there were a lot of things she had to break through in just 107 days, just 107 days. Do you think if she had more time, that some of those things could have been fixed?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think when you look at youth voter turnout and levels of support in particular, you can see the Israel-Gaza situation comes up quite a bit. Now, we don't have like the perfect set of data to really know how much that mattered, but when you look at the polling and the focus groups that are out there, you can see that especially for younger potential voters in the Black community, they were citing foreign policy and other issues, right, that again are not something where they thought Trump was on their side. They just didn't feel like the Democrats were moving in their position quite enough. And so I think we can't ignore the fact that these kind of international crises, that again, the vice president had 107 days to like formulate her whole policy that could please everybody on Israel-Gaza. That's an impossible task. So more time would have been better. I think that if voters saw that she was careful and thinking about these issues and wasn't just kind of having to take on the Joe Biden position, which is understandable, she's the vice president, it would have been a different outcome.
Well, but we also know from reporting that Joe Biden made it clear, no daylight, no daylight. And so he also was handcuffing her. Joe Biden was too arrogant in not saying, hey, do what you need to do to win. And if that means separating from me, do what you got to do. No, he was too concerned about his own legacy and his own policy when he should have been focused on winning.
You know what's, I live in Georgia. I live in Atlanta. So we get a lot of mailers around election time. And I remember one day I got a mailer from the Republican Party that had a picture of Harris and a picture of Joe Biden and said, look, they're the same thing. The next day I got a mailer from the Democrats and it had a picture of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and said the same thing, keep the course, right? Stay the course. And I think like when you get that same message from both parties, one of those parties must be doing it wrong. And I think we know who that was.
Yeah.
Greg?
Thank you, Roland, and thank you, Prof. Fraga. I mean, I want to ask you a question that sits maybe at the intersection of your work in Latinx studies and you working with the Latinx Studies Initiative down there at Emory, and your work in your book there over your shoulder, the gap there on the turnout gap. You know, when you write that these elections yield politicians that are increasingly unrepresentative of the wisdom of and the choices of all the people in the country, and that modern districts are shaping these turnout rates in terms of how people kind of like, I guess the voters, the politicians are choosing their voters. I'm wondering if you could say a little bit about your theory that the gaps in voter turnout are exacerbated by modern election politics. And I'm thinking now about the religious extremism that we were talking about before you came in. And even a figure like a Marco Rubio, a kind of twice reverted, quote unquote, Catholic. And the idea that if you can shrink the number of people who turn out, you can pick off by using wedge issues like religion, perhaps, and I'm thinking specifically about Catholicism, specifically about Latinx voters. I know it's not really a demographic category as much. It's really not a single category. But could you talk a little bit about how the question of modern electoral politics is exacerbating this gap, and how these folks may be playing on that to shrink the electorate even further and make it even less representative of the will of the majority of people in this country?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and thank you for bringing up some of the other work that I've done on Latinx voters in particular. I think what we saw in 2024 and in 2020 really was exactly what you're describing regarding the kind of modern electoral politics, picking off one group and pitting that group against another, and then exacerbating fears and tensions instead of trying to build community or build trust. And I think that's really related to what you're seeing right now in the first, whatever it is, 101 days of the Trump presidency, right? You're seeing, a continued attack on trust that the federal government can do what it's even been delegated to do by Congress, to spend the money that it's been delegated to do. I think that when you talk about modern electoral politics, you see a lot of micro-targeting, a lot of effort to, kind of surgically identify exactly this group of voters and give them exactly the message. That's a really risky strategy to me. It's a really risky strategy to say, this group, we're going to give a message that we care about your issues. This group, we know you're already on our team, so we're just going to mobilize you. We don't care what you say, or you don't need to be talking about the issues you care about and the way you're talking about them, because that's going to alienate some other group, some other demographic group, and we know who we're talking about. And I think that mentality of politics is really the problem. And I think what you see in recent years is an attempt by the Democratic Party. They've been successful in mobilizing one part of their voting population that is, frankly, empowered, older, white voters who are leaning Democratic. They can turn them out with a message that says, be really afraid of Trump. But for black voters, Latinx voters who say, doesn't matter who's in power, I'm still losing, that's not a winning strategy.
Thank you, man.
Well, I do have to ask you this here, because this is the piece that, and I've been watching a number of Latino activists, book authors, entertainers talk about. They've been talking about this anti-black view among Latinos. They've been talking about this desire to assimilate and, frankly, identify more as white than brown in this country. And so, moving forward, how do Democrats, how do black politicians, how do you deal with that? Because the Latino voter, I'm born and raised in Houston. Latino voter is not, you can't look at Latino voter the same way as you look at black voters, because you're dealing with nationality. You're dealing with Cubans and Venezuelans and Colombians and Brazilians. You're looking at Dominicans who are thinking differently within that culture. You think about Mexicans. It's a whole different perspective that you're dealing with, because we've all been talking about America becoming a nation majority of people of color by 2043. Well, that won't be the case if you have a significant number of Latinos who identify as white.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I mean, there's tremendous diversity within the Latino population. Don't get me wrong. But I think that, honestly, there's been so much emphasis on that diversity. And it's, again, that like micro-targeting. It's like each group, we're going to find one little thing, and the messages all like conflict with each other. So the idea is, in South Florida, the Democrats going to approach a Cuban voter by saying, we're not socialist. Don't worry about it. We're not actually going to do, massive, government spending and make you afraid that we're communist or whatever. And then they tell Latino voters somewhere else a different story that says, we're going to give health care. We're going to do things to actually help the community. These things conflict. We got to remember that human beings, right, generally kind of want the same kind of stuff. With some exceptions, don't get me wrong, many people in our communities, Black, Latino, also Asian American, Native American, are all kind of sitting here feeling they're struggling. They're struggling, and they want someone to come out and say, we're going to make life better for you. So, to me, when we look at the Latino electorate, the vast majority, about 70%, are of Mexican origin. The vast majority are in the Southwest. with the exception of New York and Florida. There are Latino populations growing on the East Coast and in Georgia, where I live. But in general, like trying to tailor the message to these specific groups, I think is really risky versus just going out there and having an agenda that can work for any, working class person, anyone who's saying, I feel left behind, anyone who's saying, I can't pay my medical bills, I can't afford eggs, right? These are the kinds of things that I think maybe are a better strategy for the Democrats going forward than trying to pick off one group, change their opinion a little bit, and then turn out this other group and play that kind of whack-a-mole strategy. I feel like, we need to see a different kind of agenda and strategy from the Democrats rooted in communities that are struggling, right? Instead of just what the consultants see when they look at, the voter file.
I do want to ask you this last question I have for you, and that is, we keep hearing Michigan Democratic Senator Elisa Slotkin, and she keeps talking about how Democrats need to stop appearing weak and woke. Mm-hmm. And when you hear her say that, I don't think folk like her understand how that also pisses off black people.
Yeah.
We get the weak part. But see, what a Slotkin has to understand is that, listen, you talking to a lot of white folks there in Michigan, but you're going to need black voters in the black belt in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. You're going to need a big, listen, the 2030 census is going to change the game. In the 2032 presidential election, blue states are expected to lose 10 to 12 electoral votes, congressional seats. Those are going to be shifting to southern states. That means Democrats, damn Michigan, Wisconsin, they're going to have to win a North Carolina or Georgia. And definitely you got to win Arizona and Nevada to hit 270. And so I believe white women, white Democrats and white women like Slotkin need to be real damn careful sounding like Bill Maher and these Republicans talking about woke and DEI and stuff along those lines, because you gonna need the folk who are woke to be awake to vote.
Yep. This is what we see here in Georgia. Look, Georgia was the only state in 2020 that Joe Biden won where a majority of his voters were black. It's the only one. In every other state, Arizona, California, we talk about the Latino population, a majority of his voters were white. So the idea is we need to look at the Democrats and say the future of the party is through the Sun Belt. In particular, it's these southern states. They have I haven't seen a successful really strategy for winning back these elusive white, blue collar, former union, older, populations. If they're going to start losing that population and designing strategies that turn off black voters in the South, in Georgia, in North Carolina, that either tell them, maybe try the Republicans, what do you have to lose, as Trump says, or just stay home on Election Day? Or they're going to be losing Latino voters in Arizona and California because they're not sending the right message to them about the issues that the community cares about. The Democrats are in a lot of trouble. So I do feel that this is a situation where we have to think about the context that these senators are coming from. I think if you look at the messaging of, for example, Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, Ossoff in particular, as a white man, is very, very different when he talks about the issues of concern to black voters than what you see from northern Democrats who, frankly, haven't really, maybe they should be, but they haven't really been considering, the issues of concern of their black electorates as much as what you see down here.
All right, then, Professor Fraga, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot, and thanks for the breakdown.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Folks, going to a break. We come back. We'll talk to another top analyst, Black Voter Project, breaking down these numbers. All of this is critically important to understand the mindset of voters and where they're going. Folks, support Roland Martin Unfiltered, the Black Star Network. Listen, the conversation you just saw ain't happening at MSNBC. On CNN, you're going to have Scott Jennings and a panel sitting around shouting and all of the... That's all bullshit, okay? This is about real conversations that impact our people. On this show and this network, we center black people. We are not part of the conversation. We are the centerpiece of the conversation. So So your support is critical for this show to continue and for the other shows on the Black Star Network to give to us, to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Using Cash App, use the Stripe QR code. Here it is right here. This is the QR code. You can also go to blackstarnetwork.com for the QR code. Send your check and money order. Make it out, though, to Roland Martin Unfiltered. Mail a check and money order. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo RM Unfiltered. Zelle Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Back in a moment.
This week on the other side of change.
Mass incarceration, Trump administration is doubling down on criminalization, and how it is profitable.
And there's something really, really perverse about saying that we need to put people in cages in order for other people to have jobs. Like, that is not how our economy should be built.
Only on the other side of change on the Black Star Network.
Farquhar, executive producer of Proud Family.
Bruce Smith, creator and executive producer of The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder. And you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Folks, we'll continue this conversation. The 2024 National Black Voter Project, the only longitudinal survey tracking black attitudes before, during, and after the election, has revealed a number of critical insights. Joining us right now is someone, you've seen him on the show numerous times before, and glad to have him back, Chris Towler, the director of the Black Voter Project, co-founder of Black Insights Research. Chris, glad to have you here. So let's walk through this. First off, you show that 86% of black voters backed Vice President Kamala Harris, matching the numbers in 2020.
Yep. And it's more men as well, as you have up there. I think that's a misnomer that needs to be continuously kind of pushed back against, is that this whole idea that the black population and specifically black men shifted towards Trump at all is not anything worth spending time on, right? That did not happen. The focus, as my colleague said in the previous session, really needs to be on getting out the vote and making sure that you're getting people to the polls. Absolutely in 2026, this is probably going to be one of the most important terms of our life, and then in 2028 as well.
So what you're saying is that it was a huge lie last night in this News Nation. I don't know what the hell it was. It was Chris Cuomo, Bill O'Reilly, Stephen A. Smith, and Trump phoned in. And this, of course, took place last night. Listen.
Time. Mr. President, thank you for your time. It's interesting that you brought up Harvard, because when people think about Harvard, what they're basically talking about is they're asking, what do you say to those who view your actions as an attack on academic freedom rather than a defense of fairness? What do you say to that?
Well, I say this. We had riots in Harlem, in Harlem, and frankly, if you look at what's gone on, and people from Harlem went up and they protested, Stephen, and they protested very strongly against Harvard. They happened to be on my side. You know, I got a very high black vote. You know that. Very, very high black vote. It was a very great compliment to me. I did criminal justice reform. I did opportunity zones for one of the greatest economic deals ever for the black and Hispanic community. I got tremendous. They agree with what I'm doing with respect to Harvard. Harvard gets 4 or 5
over the place. He don't know what he was talking about. So basically, Chris, what you're saying is his ass lying.
Yeah, that's a bold-faced lie.
And nobody on that panel corrected the lie.
Like, for sure.
No, it's not even, you know, you can't take that stuff seriously anymore. And when we talked about this, as you said, time and time again, leading up to the election, how so many polls were just misrepresenting the black population and not accurately talking to enough people or collecting a representative sample. And here we are, post-election, continuing the same lie. And the lie is powerful because it creates a false equivalency that does, in a sense, psychological voter suppression, causing black people to think that there's no sense in voting, there's no use in voting, because the two candidates are the same and the community's split anyway, right? It's much harder to make a real difference as to who's for the black community and who's not, so long as these lies are out there and these lies are perpetuated.
All right. You also said in terms of, while 82% of black men ultimately voted Democrat, peaking on Election Day. Explain that.
So as we measured support for the candidates over time, we found that support for Harris dramatically grew among black men when she became the candidate, but it also steadily climbed towards the election. And so when we asked people who they voted for after the election and actually got their recalled vote choice, we found that 82% of black men said that they voted for Harris, more than we actually measured in October prior to the election, and slightly more than exit polls predicted in 2020 when it came to black men's support for Biden. And so, again, it just speaks to how wrong a lot of these mainstream polls are when measuring black attitudes, and specifically when trying to understand how much support Harris had from the black community, right? This isn't necessarily the historical levels of support that we saw for Barack Obama, but these levels are right up there with the support for Biden and other Democratic candidates in the past. Again, making it such that we should not be having these extended conversations about whether or not black voters supported Harris, support the Democrats, or are moving towards Trump. That's just pointless and useless at this time.
Yeah, but see, I think part of the problem you have here is, and we discussed it in real time, all of these cable news outlets, these polls are to drive a news cycle. And these polls led to tons of story. Every media outlet, oh my God, what's going on with black men? Oh my God, what's going on? Huge support. Oh my God, same thing happened with Stacey Abrams. Oh, black men not supporting her. And then was story and story and story and story and story and story. And it was bullshit.
And this is where the Democrats, they seem to be kind of trying to find their way right now, especially when it comes to black voters. And they've done a better job at propping up some of the black voices in the party, some of the voices that have been there but haven't really been the face of the party. But they need to be able to counter these messages and counter them in a real way, right? Have these voices, these representatives, people like Booker, people like the black representatives coming on these shows, just like Trump did. Call in, counter the narrative, right? Have a voice, have a presence in the mainstream media that can counter this, because these narratives were very, very successful leading up to the election, because there was not necessarily a real sense as to what to do in response or what to say in response. But the data's out there, right? The Democrats have places that they can go and that they can look to find a counter, to find a real sort of statistical reason to shoot down these narratives, and they need to do so. It has to happen sooner rather than later.
Let me tell you something. I said point blank that whoever runs in 2028, let's just say a Governor Westmore, I'm straight and running a guerrilla campaign. And what I mean by that is I'm rolling up to stuff. Just what you said. If Trump or whoever's running in 2028, if they're on Fox, if they're Fox News, Fox and Friends, you know what I'm saying? Call a control room. And I dare them say, we're not going to put you on. And then same thing. To me, and again, and I don't have a problem with this here. Whoever's running, if they say, are you going to release your college transcripts? No. You gonna release your taxes? No. You release your health records? No. Y'all didn't give a damn about that last fool who did. See, if you keep trying to play a game that no longer exists, then you're gonna get the end result of that same old game. I just think that, again, whoever is running, they got to be swinging in a much more different way, and they got to tell these campaign strategists, go sit your ass down. I got to talk to people. I got to touch people. I got to reach people. I got to communicate with people. And the regular old way of doing it, that ain't happening.
Yeah, that's exactly what we've been hearing from black voters as well. We've been talking to people in focus groups since the election, and the people that vote all the time, the high propensity likely voters, when we ask them how do they feel about the election, they're sophisticated enough to understand the role that sexism, misogyny, racism played in sort of Harris's downfall and in her inability to pull together a successful campaign in such a short time. But when we talk to those unlikely voters, the voters that would have made a difference in this election, what we're hearing black people say is that, oh, we didn't really hear from her enough. We didn't know who she was. We still wanted to get to know her. The Democrats don't have a backbone. They're not strong enough. They seem pretty weak. We don't believe that they're going to do much for us. And so this narrative that you're pushing absolutely needs to be front and center, right? And it absolutely has to be done in a way that it's convincing voters, especially black voters, that they're going to work differently and that these representatives that are Democratic representatives are going to fight for the people in a way that actually makes them believe they can withstand Trump and the MAGA movement. That's something that really hasn't been done yet.
Questions for the panel. Nola, you first.
Thank you so much for your very, very important work. So, you know, I want to talk about not only how Black men were specifically targeted. What I've been trying to figure out is why. You know, like I am a student of history, and in terms of like, you know, how strategies are effective, you know, divide and conquer. And there's this narrative that's out there that Black women, that we have been able to be more successful and Black men are left behind, and that the Harris campaign somehow was the embodiment of that. And I'm just trying to figure out, you know, where those narratives come from, and the folks that you are talking to on the ground, if you are also hearing those kinds of things, because I can't tell you how many times I've heard that as a Black woman. Are you also hearing that in terms of how people are making up their minds and how it's altering their behavior, especially Black men, in terms of voting?
Yeah, I am hearing a bit of that, and heard all of these sort of misinformation tactics throughout the campaign. And I think one reason that Black men see the bulk of this targeting is that when you look at the Black community and you're trying to decide, okay, who are some voters that we could peel off, but more so keep from voting altogether? Who are some voters that we could convince to stay home, that voting is not a useful tool? And you look for the voters that are sort of the least likely to vote. Black women, as we know, always voted some of the highest rates across the country, right? And then you look at the voters who are also sort of the lesser of the educated group when it comes to men and women. And again, women, Black women in particular, are some of the highest educated people in the country as well. And so Black men as a group, as a cohort, kind of stands out as, oh, this is where we want to target this misinformation. This is where we're going to have the best opportunity to not necessarily peel off voters, but to keep them home. And when you flood the zone with things such as stimulus checks, with things such as, you know, Harris is weak because she's a woman, these things start to actually play and grab hold of those less sophisticated, less educated Black men who might not vote all the time, maybe have never voted and are trying to make a decision if they should use their time and energy to register and cast a vote. And they get all this information, and it puts them in a position where it seems like doing everything they might need to do, go register to vote if there's a voter ID law, get the subsequent ID to vote, find out how to vote, maybe find a polling place, maybe have to take time off work. All of these things start to seem less and less worth it when this misinformation is creating a narrative suggesting that voting, particularly for Black men, isn't going to benefit them much at all, right? Or voting for a particular candidate isn't going to help them as much as others might say. And so there's absolutely a misinformation campaign that was very successful in 2024 and is continuing. And I believe there's very specific reasons why Black men in particular are the targets.
Greg?
Thank you, Roland, and thank you, Chris. Looking at your at the study, this recent study, and looking at some of the Wave 4 results, my question has to do with a couple of things. When your research reveals that post-election there's been maybe some reversal, I think is how you characterized it, how y'all characterized it, of the attitude the Democratic Party is more welcoming, and that fatigue, exhaustion is playing a role in Black attitudes toward electoral politics at this juncture. I'm wondering, as we sit here on May Day, with over 1,000 rallies going on around the country, Bernie Sanders is in Philly today, Ocasio-Cortez in New York, and so forth, whether or not you feel like the politics of race. And I know one of the other things that looks like you all found is that in this next election cycle, presidential election cycle, black folks say race is the most important thing for them in terms of a racial candidate. Do you think that candidates, particularly black candidates, thinking about even Vice President Harris, former Vice President Harris, her speech yesterday where she seems to be opening up a little bit more, maybe breaking away from, as Roland often refers to, the most smart-ass white boys, the ones that tied her to the Biden agenda this last time, maybe cost her the election. Do you think that black candidates should lean in harder to class-based issues and kind of speak to the majority of people in this country who are struggling, and maybe attune that rhetoric and attune that critique of policy and discussion of what kind of policies that they will advance more with the kind of rhetoric we probably heard around the country today on May Day in terms of working class folks and class issues?
I think that when looking at the pool of candidates, it's going to be really important first for the Democratic Party to continue to offer platforms for some of the more prominent black voices in the party, whether it is Harris or Booker or Jeffries or Crockett. Someone like that, or someone else even, is going to have to be a prominent voice in the party that's speaking to and sometimes for black people as a representation. That's really, really important to black voters coming out of this election cycle. It also seems like black voters do care about economics, but whether it's coming from a black candidate or not, there is a need for economics to be contextualized within both not only how it's going to help the working class, but how it's going to help the black working class. And in understanding that there have been past movements, and this is really one of the knocks that I've seen on Bernie Sanders over time. There have been a number of past movements focused on economics that don't necessarily speak to how the black community is oftentimes extra exploited, right? There's this extra step of exploitation within our economic system because of racial discrimination attached and the intersection of race and class. And so when we think about the way that the Democrats can move forward, the previous guest, talked about sort of micro-targeting. I think that that's absolutely a important thing to think about with the Latino community, but with the black community, the way that we have such sophisticated technology today with AI and social media targeting and like ads and really measuring who people are by what they do on their devices, there's no reason that the Democrats can't come up with a strategic campaign message that is targeting black people and really emphasizing how these issues are important to the black community, or how Trump and the MAGA movement is hurting specifically the black community, in addition to any other message that they put out there. But for me, for these things to really matter, they really have to be honed and focused, not just on how black people are represented in the party, but how the party is going to specifically protect, defend, and fight for the black community.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Zabora?
Thank y'all both so much. I think my question stems from, you were talking a little bit about the intersectionality of classism and racism, and I'm thinking of all the other things, right? Especially, I'm from Texas, I'm from Houston, and when I think of Obama time, they came into Beaumont, Michelle Obama spoke there, Obama spoke in Houston, and they did all of the little communities that were big enough to have big pockets of black people. I think that we were focused so much in social media that we didn't necessarily do the old school grassroots organizing of touching the people, finding things that's real and relevant to their lives. So my question to you is, how do these teams weren't listening. Clearly they weren't in the communities, they weren't seeing what the communities really need. And yes, fine to send a politician there, but what can we do to really organize utilizing the resources that are already in these communities and being culturally sensitive to those communities and their needs?
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm in the camp that the time limit on Harris's campaign was really detrimental to her ability to win the presidency, that the fact that she was not able to run a full campaign or possibly have announced her candidacy, years prior and have that set up so that she was the candidate going into 2024 really hurt her. And that if she had more time campaigning, she might have been able to, close that gap in a way, if you will, between Trump and herself, especially in some of these states like Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, where you're talking about just a couple 100,000 votes, right? But I think going forward, the Democrats really need to invest in small organizations, grassroots organizations, state parties, share the wealth, right? Use their fundraising campaigns to send money to these places that are doing the on-the-ground campaigning, the mobilizing, the door-to-door, talking to people face-to-face and getting people out registered to vote into the polls. One of the main critique of Harris's campaign and the Democratic Party going into the final days of the election was that they just spent too little too late on the Black community, and that the majority of it was focused on social media and sort of these TV airwaves, and there wasn't enough infrastructure built ahead of time and money to these grassroots organizations to really build things up. And you look at Georgia as a prime example here, where in 2020, Biden was running with the benefit of Abrams working there for years and other grassroots organizations, trying to flip Georgia blue, first at the governor's office, then for Warnock in the Senate. That was like almost a decade-long campaign working there, right? We lost that, right? That did not happen again in 2024, and we don't see enough of that as we're going to need across other parts of the country, places like North Carolina, right? Even places like Nevada, right, where you have a somewhat significant Black population, enough to make a difference. And so that really needs to be happening now, right? The Democrats have something to do. They can try and take some of their fundraising money and give it to these state parties to try and get out Black voters going into 2026.
I've made perfectly clear to numerous outside groups, others, that if you want to talk about 26 now, that means organizing and mobilizing North Carolina and Georgia, because you need to defend Ossoff's Senate seat and you need to be taking out Tom Tillis. And if you're going to go to North Carolina, go sit your ass in East North Carolina. Stop trying to go to Raleigh, going to Charlotte. No, you need to be in East North Carolina, because it is a trove of Black votes there, and they do not get the level of attention. Vice President Kamala Harris only went to North Carolina one time. One time when she went to Greenville. That made no sense whatsoever. Chris, we appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Folks, Shador Sanders slides to 5th in the draft. Some are saying he's racist. I think it's racial. I'll explain next, right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. It's a rare occasion when a course taught in high school becomes a topic of national conversation, let alone a burning controversy. But that's exactly what happened with Advanced Placement African American Studies, courtesy of a certain Southern governor who's taking offense. On our next show, we take you inside the classroom for an up-close look at the course through the eyes of the teachers that teach it, the students that are taking it, and the communities that surround them.
And so many of the kids, we saw, the truth. And, it just impacts those kids in such a big way.
A master teacher round table on the next Black Table that you do not want to miss, right here on the Black Star Network.
This week on A Balanced Life, we're celebrating all things mom. Your mother figure, your auntie, your grandma, your Mimi, anyone in your life who has taught you everything that you need to know about what it means to be a woman. All those little sexy ways, all that attitude that you have, how to dress, how to speak to people, everything related to this person who has been so insightful to guide you, raise you, and steer you in the direction that you are now living. We celebrate moms and all their wonderfulness, and even our moms who oftentimes tell us like it is, girl, get yourself together. Yes, that mom. We love them all.
Nobody but your child can test your inner gangster, but you have to use the fruits of the Spirit and show that peace and patience.
And that's here next on A Balanced Life on Black Star Network.
This is Tamala Mann.
And this is David Mann. And you're watching Roland Martin
Unfiltered.
folks, so I have not weighed in on Shador Sanders and what's been going on with the NFL draft. And so I saw this clip, Jemele Hill, Clarence Hill, talking about it. Ooh, and it piqued my interest. Roland.
I think that the NFL is not used to a black kid, especially a black quarterback who comes from privilege.
Okay.
Who carries away with a certain confidence.
Right.
And so we're used to that with Johnny Manziel's and some other guys who are cocky and confident. But I think that they're not used to. And listen, I mean, we've been in sports all our life. They're used to black kids from single mothers who are happy to be in the league, who whatever else. And this kid does not have to. He didn't grow up hand to foot, hand to mouth, and he doesn't have to. Maybe he should have, like I said, that's part of the thing, but he's going to carry himself a certain way, and I think that rubs some people wrong too.
Yeah.
Right, wrong, or different. But all of course, he's a good kid.
Yeah,
No,
like there is, I think if the worst thing you can say about him is that he's overconfident and cocky, I'll take that for anybody. Right. But the only reason I hear what you're saying, and I don't want people in the chat because they've been killing me because I said, like, I don't think this was really about racism. I think about a lot of things.
It's not about that, but I think the nuance of it, there's some of, I don't really know how to deal with this kid from privilege, black kid from privilege. The NFL is not used to black kids from privilege.
All right. I want you to play that one more time.
I think that the NFL is not used to a black kid, especially a black quarterback who comes from privilege.
Okay.
Who carries away with a certain confidence.
Right.
And so we're used to that with Johnny Manziel's and some other guys who are cocky and confident. But I think that they're not used to. And listen, I mean, we've been in sports all our life. They're used to black kids from single mothers who are happy to be in the league, who whatever else. And this kid does not have to. He didn't grow up hand to foot, hand to mouth, and he doesn't have to. Maybe he should have, like I said, that's part of the thing, but he's going to carry himself a certain way, and I think that rubs some people wrong too.
Yeah.
Right, wrong, or different. But all of course, he's a good kid.
Yeah, like there is, I think if the worst thing you can say about him is that he's overconfident and cocky, I'll take that for anybody. Right. But the only reason I hear what you're saying, and I don't want people in the chat because they've been killing me because I said, like, I don't think this was really about racism. I think about a lot of things.
It's not about that, but I think the nuance of it, there's some of, I don't really know how to deal with this kid from privilege, black kid from privilege. The NFL is not used to black kids from privilege.
NFL is not used to black kids from privilege. And so we've seen these stories in terms of how people have taken issue with Shador Sanders and how he presented himself and what he wore and all these different things like that. And when Jemele said, well, I don't think it's racist. See, I keep telling y'all, this is the greatest mistake that we keep doing. We go racist, and the response is not racist. We go, this is racist. Then the response is, no, it's not racist. So that then becomes a debate. Racist, not racist is a debate. But that's the wrong conversation. Because it's the stuff in between racist and non-racist. It's racial. Now, I know some of y'all right now looking at me, y'all listening, y'all like, ooh, I'm confused now. Now, Roland, you say it's not racist, but it's racial. Okay. So let's take Shador being cocky, being arrogant, being overconfident. I'm familiar with that because white folks been saying that to me my whole career. So let me give you a perfect example of what that looks like. Clarence used to work at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. He came there on the tail end. Actually, Clarence was there after I left. And when I was there, my alpha brother, Roger B. Brown, God rest his soul, he was the only black male sports writer at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. So the Fort Worth Star-Telegram was my second job out of college. Austin American Statesman was first. So here's what was interesting. In working at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, I was a City Hall reporter. Now, mind y'all, I graduated from Texas A&M, December 1991. I spent 13 months at the Austin American-Statesman. When I got the job at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, that was my third promotion in 13 months. I don't think some of y'all heard what I just said. I was a South Neighbors reporter coming out. Matter of fact, I got to take it back. I interviewed the Austin American-Statesman. They offered me the job, $20,000 a year. I know I'm better. I ain't taking the job. Y'all got to offer me 22. Y'all got to offer me 10% more. Straight up. I know they were like, who the hell? Now understand, Knight Ridder was the second largest newspaper chain in the country. There was a guy named Bill Baker. He was vice president. Bill Baker, I met him at National Association of Black Journalists Convention. Bill Baker tells me that you know what? I think you would really work at one of our smaller papers. So he felt that, you know what? A good fit for me was their newspaper in Brayton in Florida. I looked at it and I was like, ooh, that circulation too small. Y'all too small. I'm better than that size paper. Bill Baker was stunned. He was like, wait a minute, hold up. Wait a minute, hold up. Did this black kid say he was better? Yes, I was. I was way better than the Brayton, Florida newspaper. So I got the Austin American-Statesman job. I'm there 6 months. They promote me to county government reporter. Unheard of. 7th month, the Houston Chronicle comes after me. Houston Chronicle, the largest newspaper in the Southwest, my hometown newspaper. They wanted me to cover the police beat. I was like, I can go back to Austin. I knew I wasn't covering the police beat because I ain't like the police beat. Now, I remember sitting there interviewing assistant managing editor Tommy Miller, and the look on his face was like, hold up, I know this black kid who is 7 months out of college is not telling me that he is not interested in working the police beat for 2 years at the largest newspaper in the Southwest United States. He was correct. I did not want to work the police beat because I knew I was better than that. I made it clear I wanted to work a political beat. He pulls a chart out to show me it's going to be at least 3-4 years before that could even remotely happen. I was like, well, I ain't coming here. Austin American-Statesman tells me, well, what they offering? Well, you talk yourself out of a job here at 27? Okay. 5 months later, Fort Worth Star-Telegram calls me. Offered me $32,100. The Austin American-Statesman says, can we match? No, y'all told me 27 was too much. Hell, you damn sure not gonna match 32. I wouldn't even let them counter. So I go to Fort Worth, City Hall reporter. I'm not even there a week. Riot breaks out at the Dallas Cowboys Super Bowl parade. They send me over there, race there, kick-ass coverage. They like, oh shit, this kid good. So check this out. I'm the City Hall reporter. There's a white guy who's a county government reporter. We're sitting across from each other. We're the same age. Now, what was interesting is that the white editors, he was aggressive. He was a go-getter. Loved him. But there was a period where he made a series of mistakes that required us to run corrections in the paper. Oh, I mean, just be careful, but when you're a go-getter, those things happen. I'm watching this, and I'm like, really? Now, I'm watching how the white editors are embracing him and, oh my God, putting him under their arm, but then looking at me like I'm an alien. 2 reporters, 1 black, 1 white, same age, city government, county government, and the white reporter was aggressive, was a go-getter, was assertive, had great potential for greatness. Black reporter, you arrogant, you cocky, you overconfident, you think highly of yourself. I'm commuting between Austin and Fort Worth. And that was a guy who I worked with at the Austin American-Statesman, legendary political reporter, who was married to the news director at the station where my then wife worked at. So he took it upon himself to say he was my mentor. I ain't asking him to be my mentor. I already had mentors, it wasn't him. So one of my trips back to Austin, I was commuting. He said, I want you to come by the house for dinner. So he made some soup or whatever. And we're sitting down talking, and he says, you know, I'm hearing things. What do you mean? Now, y'all, I'm only at the paper 3 or 4 months. You know, I'm hearing things. I'm hearing that you wear your ambition on your sleeve. I want y'all to listen to I need y'all to listen to the phrases. That you wear your ambition on your sleeve. That you're cocky. And I said, it's interesting. I hear that you say stuff like, you're gonna be a publisher one day. I said, well, actually, that's not me saying that. That's other staffers saying, we're gonna be working for you one day. I said, I'm sorry. Other folk are seeing this in me, so you want me to diminish. See, I'm about to say something because y'all about to miss this. So you want me to shrink who I am in order to make them more comfortable. So, white male reporter, and see, here's the crazy thing. That white male reporter is a national journalist. If I said his name, y'all know who I'm talking about. So both of our careers have gone national. But how they were looking at him was totally different than how they were looking at me. It gets better. So one day, I'm at my desk, and one of the two of my editors, Kay Northcott, now deceased, comes to talk to me. I don't know what the conversation was about, but I remember this part of the conversation. At one point, she's standing there, a little short. At one point, she goes, y'all gonna love this here. You need to get your production up. I said, I was sitting right, I went, what did you just say? I said, excuse me? Y'all, I pushed my seat back. This is no lie. I pushed my seat back and I started walking in a circle. I started walking in a circle. Like, let me calm down before I cuss this white woman out. And so she goes, let's take this into the office. And I said, oh yeah, I think you might want to take this into the office. And so I then said, but I'm gonna need 5 minutes. So she goes into the office, and I gotta grab some papers. So she goes to the office, y'all, and I go to my computer, and I print something from my computer. So I walk back, so I go into the office. And she's sitting behind the desk, and I literally go, you may want to look at that before you start talking. So she grabs a sheet of paper, y'all. And then she's looking at it. And then she looks at me. And then she looks back at the paper. You know what she was looking at? I had kept the stats of how many days I worked a year, how many days I worked a month, how many days I worked a week, and what my weekly average was for the stories that I wrote and the stories that I contributed to for the present year. And then the second sheet was the comparison to the previous year. Y'all gonna love what she said to me. She said, well, we don't measure production by how many stories you write. I said, you don't measure production by how many stories I write? I said, oh, you talking the quality of the stories. Turn to page 3. She goes to page 3. I had broken down how many of my stories ran on the front page, how many of my stories ran on the Metro page, how many of my stories ran on the inside of the front section and on the inside of the B section. Now she's looking befuddled because, see, I've now just destroyed her entire argument. And I said, see, you might have a problem because if you now say my stories are not quality stories, you do know that you're one of my 2 editors. So that means that if the stories that on the front page or the Metro cover were not quality stories, you edited those stories. So that means that that's an indictment on you. Y'all, now her ass is busted. Now she froze. I said, so can we now dispense with this production stuff and get to the real issue? All y'all white editors had a meeting and my name came up. I said, oh, you didn't think I was aware of the conversation y'all had in the room? Yeah, one of the people who was in the room told me what y'all conversation was about. So do you now want to have the real conversation with me that you want to have? See, y'all, I was arrogant. I was confident. They didn't like how I walked into the room. Well, I'm sorry, if you got promoted 3 times in the first 13 months of your job, and if you started with an offer of $20,000 and then 2.5 years later you had $34,000, that's a significant jump in a 2.5-year career. See, y'all, they weren't racist, but they were racial. Because, see, what they praised in the white staffer, they couldn't stand when it was this skin color. See, he was assertive, he was aggressive, he was a go-getter, but I was arrogant and cocky. 2 people, same paper, political beats, but they saw and they had a different perspective and a different standard for him than me. And see, what they could not stand was I did not walk into the room like this here. I didn't sneak into the room. They couldn't stand that when I walked into the room, I walked into the room. They couldn't stand that when I walked into the room, I said, I want better pay. I want better resources. They could not stand that how could this black man, I was the only black male reporter in the entire newsroom. What is it? Why is this Negro so confident? Because I went to Jack Yates High School, Magnet School of Communications, where I was voted the best student while I was there. And I killed it in radio, television, and newspaper. I had 30 awards in high school. And then I go to Texas A&M. I knew more than the seniors. Then I'm on the board of the National Association of Black Journalists. I worked in radio, in television, in newspaper. I did it all. I shot video. I was in front of the camera and behind the camera. Why was I moving the way I did? Because I was fucking good. And what a lot of white folks cannot stand, they can't stand a black man who not only is good, but knows he's good. And a black man who knows he's good, who knows he can outcompete everybody else, and they can't stand when you voice that. Because see, what they expect, they expect us to do this here. They expect us to, yeah, that's what they expect. See, y'all got to understand. One day, my grandfather, Clarence Lamont Sr., told me and my brother, he said, baby, y'all don't need to tell white folks yes, sir, no, sir. We were like, where is this coming from? This was shortly before he died. He said, yes and no will suffice. He said, my whole life I had to tell white folks, yes, sir, no, sir. He said, baby, y'all don't need to do that. See, what is hard for people to understand, and what is hard for even black people to want to admit, is that even some of us black people are uncomfortable with black swagger. Even some of us black people can't handle black confidence. We can't handle black self-assertiveness. We can't accept black self-worth. We can't accept, and I've had to deal with it, we can't accept when a black man walks into a room, sits at the table and says, we can start the meeting. Because they'll praise that in a white man. Please, by all means, tell me the difference between Baker Mayfield and Shador Sanders. Please tell me the difference when I see a lot. What is the difference when John Elway said, don't y'all draft me, if you draft me, I'm going to play baseball. What is the difference between Eli Manning standing there with his dad, Archie Manning, former NFL player, and Archie making it perfectly clear, we ain't going to the San Diego Chargers. And then when the Chargers drafted him, okay, fine, and Eli didn't even want to hold a jersey up as a #1 pick, but he got traded. Do y'all remember when Steve Young said the same thing? But I remember another black ball player, Bo Jackson, said, Tampa Bay, don't y'all draft me. I ain't playing for y'all. See, we make a mistake when we say, that's racist. We have to understand what's racial. And racial is not conservative whites and liberal whites. Because I've had the experience with the racial dynamics from white liberals. Well, there's an expectation how you need to carry yourself. There's an expectation. They want us to reduce who we are. What Clarence Hill was saying to Jamel Hill was, Shador Sanders is a millionaire. Shador Sanders was making $4 or $5 million with NIL deals in college. Shador Sanders is not walking into the room with a broke daddy and who's in prison and a mama who's on welfare and he's Shador Sanders ain't walking up to a head coach like Michael Irvin did when he called Tom Landry my new daddy. That ain't Shador Sanders. And see, these NFL, y'all gotta understand, Bill Rhodes laid out in a $40 million slave. The NFL truly is the last plantation. Because the NFL's whole system is set up as a plantation. And it's hard for these 32 billionaires, only one who's not a white man, the Jacksonville Jaguars owner. It's a little hard to accept a supremely confident black man. See, y'all got to understand, Shador don't have his daddy's talent. See, they could not deny his daddy's talent. Deion tells a story where he went to the combine, a team wanted to interview him, and Deion said, "What's y'all draft pick?" They were like 12 or 15. Deion said, "Oh, hell, I ain't talking to y'all. I ain't even gonna be around that long." This is the NFL saying, we need to teach him a lesson. This is the NFL saying, yeah, we need to teach him a lesson. He don't quite understand how we roll. And see, part of the other issue is that there's no other game other than the NFL. The CFL don't even compare. I mean, the reality is you got a lot of millions in the NBA, but you can make a lot of money in China and in Europe playing basketball. The NBA is still supreme, but you can still make millions over there. But the NFL is like, no, we the only game in town. So if you want to play in this league, you got to play by our rules. And I heard somebody say, well, the NFL, they'll draft anybody. They'll pick anybody because if you got the talent, you can play quarterback. No, that ain't true. Because there was a whole bunch of teams desperately needed a quarterback who wouldn't touch Colin Kaepernick. But Colin Kaepernick crossed the line. Colin Kaepernick said what James Baldwin said: I am not your Negro. I need us to understand when we're having these conversations, not everything that we endure can be classified as racist. But I can guarantee you that racial dynamics were certainly at play when it came to Shador Sanders being drafted. Going to our panel. Greg, I'm going to start with you.
Well, I think, let me just say that what she just did, the nuance, the attention to detail, and crafting that bridge between your experiences and what we're seeing emerge with young brother Sanders, I think was highly ambitious and is going to require a lot of reviewing for people and have to listen very deeply. Because in that metaphor, you would be Shador Sanders. And of course, I think in terms of metaphorically, I think you would be closer to Deion than Shador, in the sense that just like Travis Hunter clearly went where he went because of his gift, they couldn't deny your gift, and you wouldn't let them to. Wouldn't let them, but like Deion Sanders, you could do that because you had those gifts coming in. And also, closer to Deion Sanders and his son, much closer than his son in terms of class, you came from working class folk who knew what it was to break their backs and bust their asses to be in a space, and you were on a mission to extend what you had received into the next generation. So that having been said, since I don't anticipate watching the NFL anytime soon, I don't know what Shador Sanders will or will not do in the NFL. I do know, I think you made a number of critical points, and I'll end with this, but one near the end that you made there by drawing attention to NIL and the money that's being generated now, not just for star athletes at the college level, but for everybody on a roster for some of these places. I don't know what Bill Belichick's going to do chasing behind his young girlfriend down there in North Carolina. It looked like he was going to, but I know what Michael Vick might be able to do at Norfolk, and maybe there'll be one or two others. I'm hoping the good brother Reggie Bartlow at Tennessee State can do some things now. I think he's a better fit in some ways even than Coach George was, but ultimately we're facing a moment now where staying in school might actually be the thing that people start doing rather than subject themselves to the NFL plantation, because quite frankly, they can make a lot more money in college. And so I don't know how that's going to emerge, Roland. I'll end with that, brother, because I think we're in uncharted territory right now.
See, Nola, what I'm laying out, and I need people listening, and you and I have had these conversations, I need people listening to understand that what I'm talking about when I say what is racial and not necessarily racist, you've got experiences in the foreign policy area. You've been in those rooms. You've been at those tables. You've been in those meetings. And folk don't understand it. They don't understand what it, and we know it when we see it. We can sit there and go, I see how you talking to him. I see how you talking to her. But when I say something, it's a whole different reaction, because they have these preconceived notions of how somebody black should talk. Listen, the reason we have the shirts when someone the shirts not somebody's black. Soledad, I think I got one around here. When somebody said, yeah, Roland's not the right kind of black. And it was a black woman who told her that. Oh, he not the right kind of black. So there are white folks who said the exact same thing. They won't say it directly, but they say it through their actions, Nola.
Ooh, 1000%, honey. This conversation is so juicy. I have been following this story growing up in New Orleans, Louisiana, honey, bleed, ride or die for the Saints. But since the thing with Kaepernick happened, I really haven't been that involved in football. But this situation just kind of like, I have just been obsessed with this story for all of the nuances that you illuminated. Because, you know, it's confidence, okay. Racialized, okay, but at the end of the day, it's about not being able to control that person, right? That person who swaggers in, who has the confidence, that helicopter parent that's gonna be all up in the business. Everywhere you go, that parent gonna go, because that sure was my daddy and for sure was my mama. And so, you know, in my own experience, coming from the community that I come from in New Orleans, people are often shocked that I'm not talking about an experience that was in the projects of New Orleans, which is fine, you know, or in some of the situations that, God bless them, that the rappers, you know, romanticize in their music. They are shocked to find that I come from a community that is about family and education. That I grew up on Xavier's campus, and I had been in every single STEM program since I was in the 5th grade because my daddy worked there, right? So when you are black and you show up black, but you have that confidence and you have that swag, you know, that offends people around the table because you were supposed to know your place, right? So how dare you not know your place? It always goes back to this concept of the uppity Negro. And I know that's very kind of dated language, but I think the thinking is the same. How dare you, black boy? How dare you, black girl, not know your place? Sit there and be quiet. We invited you here, but we don't want to hear from you. Right? We just want you here, you know, to say that you were here. So, you know, the Shador thing has been fascinating to see. And one of the things that was really interesting to me, once he did get picked and I read his message, it was humble, it was kind, and, you know, it made me wonder, to some level, did that work to a degree? You know, we'll see, you know, once football season comes around and who he will be, how he will integrate with the team. But his response to the team wasn't the guy who everyone was painting him out to be. So it'll be very interesting to watch the story, to see how he evolves. But I say congratulations, young man, you know, do your thing. And for those black helicopter parents out there that are heavily involved in their kids' lives, it's going to make people uncomfortable because that's not statistically what they say black parents do, right? Continue to support your children. Continue to be in those rooms to make sure that they are not being taken advantage of. Because I know when I was a kid actress, they hated to see my mama coming, honey.
But see, Zabor, the thing for me, and again, y'all know I had to find it. So, because this what we did put it on the shirt. This was what this was. So if y'all want the shirt, it's on our website. Not the right kind of black. And I'm real proud being not the right kind of black. Because see, when I think about not the right kind of black, I think of Toussaint, freedom. And see, this right here, Zabora, is the hardest thing. See, what those cats don't realize is Shador is a free Negro.
That part.
The reality is, let's be real clear. Shador Sanders could have stayed for his senior year and made $4 to $6 million. Shador Sanders could bypass the NFL and go into business. I need people to understand, the owner of the Phoenix Suns is a former Michigan State basketball player who's now a billionaire. See, when you have options, see, Zabora, cats don't understand. I love it when the white boys see me in my Rockets or Texans or Astros or Texas A&M gear, and especially my A&M gear. Did you play football? No. Are you a parent?
No.
No. Well, what are you? A graduate. But what really mess them up, Zabora, is when they go, did you play ball? I said, no. Mom and daddy told me I could become a millionaire using my brain and not my body. Then I pause. I let it sit there. And I go, and they were right.
It works.
Yep, I'm that kind of Negro. Yep, see that right there. That's me. I'm that arrogant, cocky, not the right kind of black, because I am not about to let you diminish me as if I only can get to where I am because I play ball. Go right ahead.
I totally agree with everything you said. I think that being a Black person in the field working with deaf individuals, I see this all the time, right? I'm the only Black person that's going to come in and be an advocate. And when I look at individuals that are coming from U of H and Lamar and these Texas schools that provide services, or even up here in D.C. at Gallaudet, or seeing the deaf individuals at Howard, I am knowing that because it's only me, I got to be confident. I got to work hard. I have to be smarter. I was listening earlier, and he was talking about just that hole back in the employment world and everything that Trump is doing and how it's impacting. It's so much intersectionality when it comes to Black individuals and how we are experiencing. Like you said, it's not racist, it's racial, it's microaggressions, it's micro insults. You know what I mean? It's micro intimidations. Like, they want us to not be confident in what we do, but no one does it like us. No one comes to the table like us. Don't nobody know with us. One thing that stood out to me when you was talking, you talked about not only being a journalist, but you talked about being behind the camera. You knew every part of it.
I learned that first.
If I don't work over here, I can work over there. You can't do nothing to me because I don't have to give you that kind of power. And I think us being mentors and being around other individuals of color in these spaces that don't have that many of us, we got to walk with confidence, because they got to see they don't have to take what we had to take. You can see somebody doing it, and this is how you do it. And we pass it back, we pass it forward. And that's what's important about everything you said.
And see, I'm just going to remind some people. I just need to remind some folks. Because see, sometimes y'all got to understand. I know some of y'all saying, well, Roland, you know, this ain't the same. You know, that Shador, whatever. Okay, all right. Do y'all remember this interview on ABC and this happened?
I know I can get it. I know it. Very confident. I'm very confident. You say it so easily. Why? Because I believe it. And let me tell you why. What she said it with so much confidence the first time. But if you keep going on and on. Listen, we can't keep interrupting. I mean, if you want, you got to understand that you're dealing with an image of a 14-year-old child. And this child gonna be out there playing with your old ass and me gonna be in the grave. When she says something, we done told you what's happening. You deal with a little black kid, and let her be a kid. She'll answer it with a lot of confidence. Leave that alone. I'm very confident. You say it so easily.
Yes, sir.
See, I need people. See, I need y'all to understand what's at play. I keep telling y'all, may not be racist, but it's racial. And I need you to understand because, again, how in the world can this girl be so? And see, y'all, what's bringing it back for me is my niece. We call her Bird. Precocious, wonderful, creative mind, and a kindergarten teacher questioned a drawing of hers. And all of a sudden, when she came home, she kept saying, "Is this okay? Is this good?" We were like, "Whoa, where did this come from?" Then we found out what happened. That kindergarten teacher, literally, that interaction changed perspective. Oh, you know damn well we went to that school, got her ass booted out of that classroom. But see, I just need folk to understand that what you're dealing with here, and guess what? This ain't, now granted, now we know he don't really claim us, but here is golfer Curtis Strange talking about Tiger Woods. I need y'all to listen to this.
Certainly an incredible amateur record, but what do you say to those guys?
Well,
when you come out here, you know what I'm saying, your first pro tournament, you say, you know, I can win.
Oh, I understand that. I've always figured that why go to a tournament if you're not going there to try and win? There's really no point in even going. That's the attitude I've had my entire life, and that's the attitude I will always have. As I always explained to my dad, second sucks, and third's even worse. That's just a feeling.
But on tour, that's not too bad sometimes, though.
That's not too bad, but I want to win. That's just my nature.
You'll learn.
I'm going to roll that back, the last 10 seconds. I want y'all to look at the look on Curtis Strange's face and the little laugh. Watch this.
Sucks, and third's even worse. That's just a feeling.
But on tour, that's not too bad sometimes, though.
That's not too bad, but I want to win. That's just my nature.
You'll learn. I'm just kidding you.
No, you're not just kidding.
You'll learn. I'm just kidding. I'm playing that because I want people to understand how Dion raised his sons, how Dion made it clear to them how they are to operate, how they are to carry themselves. I just need y'all to understand what this thing is all about. And see, this is the piece that too many people keep missing. They keep missing. This thing goes beyond Shador Sanders. There are people who want to steal the confidence of black boys and girls.
For sure.
Joe Namath had a phrase. He said, "It ain't cocky if you can do it."
That part.
When Joe Namath said, "We gonna win the Super Bowl," you lost your damn mind. Then they won. He's locked in history forever because he called it. Babe Ruth pointing to the stands. I'm going yard. See, y'all gotta understand. Folk need to understand what we're dealing with. This thing is so much broader. What you're dealing with folk who are saying, I'm gonna need you to temper that. I'm gonna need you to diminish yourself to make us comfortable. Why can't you act like him? Because I ain't him.
That part.
Mom and daddy didn't raise me like him. And see, this is where we get caught up in this humility stuff. we get, I need people to understand. I mean, why can't you be humble? It ain't cocky if you can do it. Why can't you diminish yourself? That's what they're saying. And the danger for us is for us to then turn to our young black boys and our black girls and tell them in the kindergarten, in the first grade, in the second grade, diminish yourself. It's a difference if you disrespect your opponent. It's a difference if you laugh in their face, if you stand over them and you taunt them. But damn it, if you that good and you get to wear their ass out, then I'm simply that good. And allow my greatness to speak for itself. Black people, be very careful when we begin to tell our own, you need to pull back. I think you too much. I'm just gonna leave y'all with this one here. I ain't gonna say her name, but one of my former colleagues at CNN came up to me, we had the same agent, and said, you know, I think you can be a bit much. And said, you know, if you play this right, you could be like Lou Dobbs. And I went, I don't want to be Lou Dobbs. Well, what do you want to be? I want to be Roland Martin. I don't want to be Lou Dobbs. See, she felt that I was too much. She felt that when I walked into the room, that that I was just too much walking in the room. She no longer there. Lou Dobbs flamed out, acted a fool at CNN, had to sit here and go down. He looked like a shell of himself on Fox Business, lied about the election of 2020, and they summarily fired his ass. And when Lou Dobbs died, nobody gave a damn. Because the Lou Dobbs then was not the Lou Dobbs at the end. I'm trying to tell y'all, run your race.
That part.
Run your race. I don't worry about anybody else running. Somebody hit me, somebody said, somebody text me, man, I wish you were on News Nation last night instead of Stephen A. Smith. I said, I don't want to be on News Nation. I said, I'm not begrudging Stephen A. being on that. I said, I have no desire to sit next to Bill O'Reilly.
That part.
Well, I don't want to. Can I ask you?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Can we ask you about Stephen A? Only because, and I don't want to make this about him, but confidence is one thing. But when you are so thoroughly out of your lane and so thoroughly overboard, that and racists like Bill O'Reilly, of course, now looks pretty Chris Cuomo, one of the owners of New Nation, cultivate that confidence with the direct objective of creating a caricature of who our people are. I won't say Stephen A. Smith, although that's exactly who I'm talking about, but that type. How do we grapple with that? And this isn't a character.
No, it's how you deal with anything.
But I know when they put them there, it's not, their confidence is being used against us.
But it's not, but again, let's be real clear. A person could exhibit confidence, but it must be backed up with actions.
Some competence.
Yes, competence goes with confidence.
That part.
You can, again, if you don't know your stuff, being brash don't mean nothing because you got to back it up.
That part.
See, you know those Jubilee debates you see on YouTube? Where you debate 25 people?
Yeah.
Well, I'll be doing it next month.
What?
Oh, Jesus.
What do you say?
Don't call me.
I'll be in LA next month. And I'm just letting y'all know. I'm going to sit down, and this is what I'm going to say. Bring your ass.
Oh, that's gonna be a good one.
Bring your ass.
Wait to see that. I want a front row.
See, again, when you bring the knowledge, when you bring the funk, that goes hand in hand with your confidence.
That part.
Dion, the Jerry curl, the jewelry, but he ran a 4.19.
Yeah.
You could be 8 yards ahead of Dion. Oh, he gonna catch up because he had closing speed. See, again, it's also work ethic. It's a lot of people with confidence who don't work, who don't study, who don't read. So they go into the debate winging it.
Right.
See, you got to also study. That's what cats don't understand. So when those white editors were calling me cocky, they were denying me working late. See, they called me cocky and arrogant. Well, when the new laptops came in that I pressured them to buy, I was the first one there saying, bring it here. Let me learn the system. So when Oklahoma City blew up, and I was one of the first folk they called to send there, we are sitting in the hotel room, and one of the laptops is not working. We could not send the story out because something was wrong with the modem, and the reporter starts freaking out. I said, chill, calm down, write your story on the laptop. What do you mean it can't send out? Boo, I brought a floppy disk. I was thinking ahead. And so we're sitting here. See, again, when you prepare, when you study, when you're ready for the moment, then you're ready to shine.
That part.
And that's the mistake. So Shador, most accurate pastor in the country, Johnny Unitas Award winner, all the accolades, everything y'all say y'all want, he got. But what's the problem? So this is what all I'm simply saying is, the folk who are watching and listening, when you put the work in, when you study, when you're at the top of your game, and you're willing to challenge anybody, and they call you everything in the world, but they praise folk with lesser talent, do you know anything about that? Last point, and this is what I said when I worked in white media. I am going to take away all of your excuses. I'm going to work on all of my weaknesses. I'm going to listen to you, look at my review. I'm going to work on all my weaknesses. So when it comes down to the end, it ain't got nothing to do with skill set, talent, or knowledge. That's when we know it's racial. Zabora, Greg, Nola, thanks for being on today's show. Folks, I hope you learned something from our conversation. I hope you learned a lot from the guests that we had today. This is why we do what we do. This is why we do what we do. Because you ain't gonna have that conversation other places. And if you don't have a black-owned space to have that conversation, then where else can you do it? That's the reason Ida B. Wells Barnett and Harry Belafonte and James Baldwin's on the wall. Because we are about speaking truth to power and centering our people. So support the work that we do. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. If you want to do so, our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing on average $50 each a year. It's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. If you can't give that, we understand that. Please, you give less. We appreciate every single dollar. If you can give more, we appreciate that as well. Almost 4,000 of y'all on YouTube right now. Y'all should be hitting that like button like crazy. I'm looking right now. We have 1,900 likes. There's no reason why we don't have 3,000 likes right now. Y'all should be hitting that button. So support the work that we do. You want to contribute via Cash App, folks, here's right here. Use a Stripe QR code, click the Cash App button and continue to pay. To contribute, you can also use a Stripe QR code for credit card as well. If you want to send a check and money order, make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered. Roland Martin Unfiltered, send it to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 2003 7-0196. PayPal, R. Martin Unfiltered. Venmo, RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Be sure to get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. Available at bookstores nationwide. Get the audio version that I read on Audible. Be sure to get our Roland Martin Unfiltered swag. That's it. You absolutely can get this shirt right here. Of course. Yes, right. Not the right kind of black. You can get it right here on our website, plus our other shirts. MAGA chose between woke or broke. They chose broke. Also, hashtag, we tried to tell you, FAFO 2025. Actually, I'm going to have Keenan change that. I'm going to have him put project. So Keenan, you listening, I need project in red above FAFO, and I need project X out, and then below that is FAFO 2025. The other shirt is Don't Blame Me, I voted for the black woman. Get that as well. So go to rolandmartin.creator-spring.com. QR code is there. Go to blackstarnetwork.com. Folks, also download the app Fanbase. Android Play or Google App Store, Android Store or the Apple App Store. And of course, you can also, if you want to invest, get more information at startengine.com/fanbase, startengine.com/fanbase. Folks, that's it. I'll see y'all tomorrow. My Rockets handled their business last night. We, of course, down 3-2. Now we go back to the Bay. Game 6 is Friday. And, yeah, we're going to beat the Warriors to force a Game 7 back in H-Town. So I'll see y'all tomorrow right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Holla! Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?